This is an important point. You see, this is what we would say contaminated virtue, zache in Tibetan, virtue. And what that means is, even when we do good deeds, there's still some self-interest there, to put it very crudely. There's self-interest. Because we, right now, as we haven't really looked into the nature of self, we actually still are in its hypnotic spell. Finally, at the end of the day, for us, it's us against the world. Our body and feelings, perceptions, formations and consciousness are I, me. They belong to me, and it's me. Which means, of course, where there's I, there is other. And where there's I and other, as I've said a number of times now, there's the ground out of which the disturbing emotions will grow. So until I cut through entirely the fiction of self, everything I do is going to be in a way contaminated under the sway of self. Now, that sway of self sometimes is very tight. Like, for instance, so when the disturbing emotions are firing up in my mind because of clinging to self, I really don't like that person. So, therefore, one feels aggression. Then those kind of very obviously self-centered actions lead to negative actions, violence, etc., oppression, and so on, and therefore to suffering, the suffering states of samsara, whether the so-called lower realms or just suffering and difficulties as a human being. Whereas if one is like, the sense of self is still there, but at that time, that day, or perhaps with that person, it's not, the tightness is not so, it's not so tight, then there's still room for some kindness, and so, I've got a bit of room for you, I've got a bit of space, I don't need to kind of be bullying you and beating you and coercing you, I've got a bit of time and a bit of space, and so I can make you a cup of tea, I can be kind to you, I can do this for you. So virtue happens in that way. But look, it's still contaminated, because at the end of the day, still one is clinging to self. One is thinking, for instance, in subtle ways, I like this person, I want to do something good for them, but there'll be a good outcome too for me. So that is contaminated virtue. So it leads to the good moments in life. It leads to, all impermanent, of course, just all sufferings and happiness are impermanent. So it leads to the good outcomes. Like, one has some friends. One has a kind of some positive things in one's life. They'll go, of course, because they're all just conditioned things, but one has them as an outcome of the virtuous actions. But the virtuous actions are still contaminated because one hasn't broken free from the self. And so when the good times fade, when that particular person is not there, the greed, hatred, delusion come roaring back, because basically still one's perception of the world is me versus the world, me, self-interest. So all virtue done that way is contaminated. Should one not do it? Of course one should. One has to work with what one has, to become entirely free from the sway of self-centeredness. One has to start where one is at now and try to make more room and space for others, as I was saying in this as an analogy. But one should finally try to root out the clinging to self entirely. That one would be a Buddha in that case. And a Buddha, an enlightened person's virtue, is uncontaminated. There's no self-reference. It's just really their radiation of compassion to others. Whereas our radiation of compassion to others is contingent, dependent, and parsimonious. The Buddha's radiation of compassion is total, because he or she has nothing to defend, nothing to grab from that person, nothing to depend upon that person for. So virtue is we should always try to be virtuous, but one should still recognize the difference between contaminated virtue and the uncontaminated virtue of enlightened people.